to Europe 04 through the eyes of young people. We will be discussing about common challenges and perspectives. Today I'm pleased to welcome Klaudia Kozak from Poland, master student of Sorbonne University. Klaudia. Katrin Shmacina from Belarus, graduate of Maxwell School of Syracuse University, New York State, foreign policy analyst at UKI Labs, Belarusian media startup. Taras Ivorsky from Ukraine, graduate of Warsaw School of Economics, owner and managing director of international company based in Warsaw, TC Management Group. Nevan Genadia from Bosnia and Herzegovina, graduate of Banja Luka University, councillor of the local assembly and municipality of Constanza, Republic of Spratska, Bosnia and Herzegovina. Sorry for pronunciation. Okay. And Elisa Bodenstab from Germany, graduate of Oldenburg University and a master student of social anthropology at the Münster University. So the EU has an ambition to be perceived as a global actor, global leader. Today we will be discussing why future of Europe matters for all of us. What will like future of Europe after 30 years, and about competitiveness of the European community in the comparison to the United States, Russia, and China. And the first question goes to Taras. My question is about Industry 4.0, because digitalization, manufacturing will result in a wide range of changes. For example, manufacturing process, speed of manufacturing, large improvements in product quality and significant reduction in errors. What do you think, what will Industry 4 bring for Europe and what it will change in the future?
Thank you for your question. First of all, I think everyone just read many different articles about Industry 0. So maybe it's better to talk about Industry 5.0 and to think more what we will see in our future, because our speed in daily life is so quick that we need to understand what we need to expect in 5 years and to be prepared for that, to be prepared for different changes in our day-to-day life with our smartphones, with our home, which will become very clever, and it will bring us many different functions that we cannot expect even now, because even 2 or 3 years ago, I didn't imagine such stuff like different iPhone 10 or Apple Watch or stuff like home that can provide different functions for each of us. So as for me, it's more to talk about Industry 5.0 than about Industry 4.0. Thank you. Okay,
thank you. And thanks for highlighting the pros of the Industry 4 and 5. But there are also disadvantages of the Industry Europe 4.0. And I'd like to ask Klaudia. Klaudia, what do you think? What is the main challenge for the Industry 4.0? Do you think that digitalization manufacturing will result in increasing unemployment rate, or will robots take our jobs in the future? And generally, what will be what type of challenges should we expect from Europe 4.0?
Okay, thank you. So, in my opinion, Industry 4.0 revolution creates the challenges mainly for low qualified employees. Of course, those technologies are still under development, but we can hear right now mostly about disappearing of basic jobs. So. In the other hand, we can hear about the demographic problems and this gap and missing employees. and about underemployment. So maybe those challenges are also solution for problems connected with demography. And also new technologies creating new workplaces for more qualified employees. So of course we and it's yeah sorry,
no problem.
Yeah, it's we can hear about like challenges and problems, because I haven't mentioned before what it's worth to mention, like taxi drivers who blame the Uber for replacing them, and or for example the supermarkets who like introducing new technologies as automatic cashiers. So maybe it will be more difficult to find like the student job, but we'll have new jobs for qualified people, and maybe it's will also help us to increase work like time of working for employees, because like jobs which based on knowledge can, in my opinion, be done doing like longer time. Another thing is nowadays companies build their factories in the low developed countries. And because due to high workforce costs, so maybe when we replace human work by robots, we eliminate this problem, and those companies will coming back to Europe, and when they build those companies here again, like factories, they will create new places, because it's not about the factory, but all small companies around. Of course, there is many challenges, and which Industry 4.0 creating for us for in the future. But in my opinion, there is many phases of this phenomenon. It depends for which perspective we are looking at it. Because, for example, when we will look at competition, we can say that now. With new technologies, employees or producers don't have to competing only with the low cost, but they are able also to compete with the innovation. Also, they are able to compete with quality. And of course, it's a challenge for small, not innovative companies, but it's also provide us better competition, and it provide us. For us customers, like new products, and also better quality of service. So it's like a big plus for it. So what I said, we have, of course, many challenges, but in my opinion, what I am sure about is to be successful and deal with those challenges, we need to change our attitude, and it's not possible anymore to stuck in the past. To be successful, we need adaptability. We need also open-minded way of thinking, and need of constant improvement. So yeah. So of course there are challenges, but I don't think it will be the big problem, because it's still open topic for us.
Thank you for the comprehensive answer. I do agree with you. It has more advantages than disadvantages. And the next topic, I'd like to ask our panelists.
Can I get some points regarding unemployment? I got some good example, because, for example, 10 years ago, when you wanted to get a job, you have approximately 5 different opportunities. You go to a restaurant, you go to street, and just give some market materials. For now, you can watch 10 videos on YouTube, then you can register on Upwork, and you will have approximately 100 different opportunities for you. And I think when we are talking about unemployment, each day our world creates new opportunities for each of us. and you can find what you want. 10 years ago, if you had just 18 years old, you go to street and do something that you really dislike. For now, you can find something that you really like, and you can earn as much as you can.
Thank you. Now I'd like to ask a question to Elisa related to the EU competitiveness and the EU's competitive advantage, because as you're aware, China and the United States are more, let's say, advanced in terms of technologies, renewable energy, and so on. And Elisa, what do you think? How can you compete with China and the United States in terms of renewable energy and technology? Because in 2016, EU showed really good example that 90% of electricity in European Union came from renewable energies, and Germany was the leader. So Germany installed the biggest amount of wind turbines, following by France, Netherlands, Iceland, and Lithuania. And now we are witnessing that the EU is shifting from the fossil fuel to renewable energies. So I'd like to hear from you. Maybe you can share some thoughts. How can you compete with China and the United States?
I think that especially in Europe, you can already see that there is a very huge change in the mindset of people. The whole social entrepreneurship scene is getting bigger and bigger, so you can see little startups everywhere trying to make positive change, to have a good impact, to be proactive in change. And so another problem, of course, it's important to focus on innovation and technology, but with the whole technology, there's also that concept starting that people can't really touch matters anymore, but everything starts conceptualizing, like we heard in the panel before. So, for example, things like sustainability, nature, instead of being that real thing that you interact with all the time, it starts being a concept in the heads of people. And I think that a big starting step would be to go back to the roots, to the core values, and to focus on those values through things like education to make it more connectable again. Because if people have a better connection to nature and to understand it better and to understand also themselves better, then it will be easier to focus on the future, on renewable energy, and to make it grow better. Because the ideas are there, the technology is constantly developing, so we have all the opportunities in the world. It's really just how we perceive the world at the moment that is on the edge of maybe going into a direction that isn't focused on positive change anymore and on future generations. And also, I think through events like this, it's already a good start, because international exchange and having all those ideas from different countries and seeing how it can also be done is a very, very good start, because it's constant learning from each other.
Thank you. Thanks. And the next question goes to Nevan, who has recently returned from Russia. He was visiting Moscow, and he would like to share Russian perspective. How do they see, let's say, the future of Europe? And EU needs to compete, as we mentioned, with Russia, US, and China. And maybe you'd like to share Russian perspective. How do they see us?
Thank you. First of all, I want to say hello to all my colleagues. My name is Neven Gennady. I am from Bosnia and Herzegovina, Republic of Srpska. I'm actually second time here, and I want also to express my congrats to all volunteers and organizers that brought us here, and once again, thank you for everything. Yes, I was a few days ago in Russia, actually on conference about BRICS development. So on that conference I saw a really interesting perspective of Russia and of their future maybe, because they are really trying to engage as much as possible in the BRICS development. And also delegates from the other BRICS countries, because there were like 5 delegates from each BRICS country and the 5 from the rest of the world, where I actually was. They were agreed on almost every topics, and some officials from Moscow, they even sent some thoughts about institutionalization process of BRICS in future. And that also must be, in terms of Europe, an issue, but also on the other side, it can be something good for Europe. Depends on the way we watch on that development. I need also to say that sanctions that are imposed on Russia by United States predominantly, and Europe by following it, they are, you know, especially the latest, they're hard, I think. And even President Putin these days, when I was in Moscow, he delivered speech on national TV, and government start campaign about raising a pension level, retirement border, because in Russia it was like 53 years for women, and now 55 years for women, and now they're suggesting to go on 63. And if for men it was like 60 years, and now they're suggesting to go to 65. So I'm not an economist, but you probably know, who are studying economics, that the country which raised retirement level has some struggles with its economy. So it's obvious. I'm not saying that it is the only result of these sanctions, but however, I think it is one of issues from that. When we talk about the Europe, one of the most famous advocates of European federalism was Richard von Coudenhove, and between 2 wars he was actually proposing some idea of Europe that we have like today, and writing it about that idea in 1926, he pointed somehow a dark picture of Europe in future, and he said that the world hegemony of Europe is outthrown for all times. From its dominating position, it has been thrown back upon the defensive, threatened in a military way from Russia, and in economically by USA competition. So I think really that that words are like almost true when we saw situation today. Europe itself, I am not the member, I'm not the participant from the European Union member state, but I also see it like that Europe become increasingly divided lately, especially about the issues regarding Russia, about sanctions toward Iran, about maybe some climate changes or other topics. And I believe that there is no longer that old-fashioned approach of Europe towards, especially towards Russia, when there was a period of the like Cold War, when a weak Europe at that time was like dependent on USA because of its security policy, and acted as one contained line between US and Russia. Today, each European country is separate. Most of them has their own interests, their own thoughts, even some of them maybe emotions, especially business ties. And I think that in future, that kind of interests are mostly going to govern relations to Russia. And I heard what Mr. Mayer said in the previous panel. He said that, I will try to make a citation about it. He said, EU is in trouble. And why? He said it's some kind of exhaustion, and maybe EU needs new members or so on. But actually, I would like to oppose to that stance. I want to clarify one thing, but it's from my own perspective and my personal belief. I believe that actually EU is struggling because United States put EU in confrontation towards Russia. Although, even if you look at geographically, it's somehow natural that Europe and Russia cooperate. And I hope so it will happen in future. Why? Because they are so close to each other. And when you look, where are the United States? They are so far. I think and I believe, I want to believe that in future we will have some at least basic cooperation between Russia and European Union. I know that some countries suffered from Russia, as Poland, but as well Poland also suffered from Germany. And I know some fears, but I believe that there is a future for not only European Union, but maybe our whole continent and even humankind, if we are starting to think about making friendships instead of confronting to each other, especially on these levels and countries and institutions like European Union is and Russia. I probably have more to talk about this topic, but I will stop here and maybe continue later also to answer on some questions.
Neven, correct me if I did not understand well, but you stressed that the sanctions are too tight, right?
The sanctions are?
Towards Russia are too strict, too tight, right?
Yes, I think, yes, it's correct. Maybe not the first package of sanctions, but the latest one, I think yes. But Mr. Mayor, I'm again mentioning him because he mentioned exhaustion. The sanctions are exhausting both European Union as well. And the people who think that European Union is not suffering from sanctions, they are wrong. Of course, we know it's suffering Russia, but also the European Union. I saw the videos where the European producers of fruits are throwing away that fruits. And if you watch official statistics of Russia trade and the imports, you will see that the European Union was there like, I think, third partner. And now the China rise their trade with Russia. In 2016 and 2017, it was the 25% more in 2017 than 2016. So somebody is taking Europe's place in the terms of Russia. China is also doing their expansion to Africa. Probably you know and you heard about their credit lines, about their involvement in African continent. America is trying to consolidate their interior policy, and Russia and the European Union are actually struggling and not separate than one against another. And I think that leaders should think about it more in future and to cooperate, not to confrontate.
Thank you, Neven. Thanks for the comprehensive answer. And I'm sure, because the topic itself is very controversial, probably we'll have some questions from the audience later. And the last question to Catherine. What do you think, what will EU and the future of the balance of power look like in 30 years? And can states prevent creation of hegemonies through balancing?
Well, the short answer to the question, what will happen in the next 30 years, is it depends. It depends on who will shape those 30 years of the politics. It will depend on the political landscape. Take, for instance, the Cold War end, when Francis Fukuyama came up with his famous statement of the end of history. And the aspirations at that time were that we are observing the triumph of democracy and the inevitability of this way of political choice and this political development. And now we are observing quite a different trend, and we are seeing the backslide of the democracy. Just last month, 40 leading US scholars purchased a space at the New York Times Magazine to publish an advertisement where they were urging the decision makers to preserve the liberal international order. And they named President Trump as the main challenger of this order. Currently, well, they were talking about the US, but we are observing this challenge of the democratic values and the challenge of the liberal international order in the Western Hemisphere in general. And there is a lot of discussion whether the West will still lead in the century, or we're observing the Easternization, the shift towards the rise of the Eastern country, such as China. But the question is not who will take over, but what values will prevent if that country takes the lead. And we are entering the time of the new geopolitical competition, when there are rising powers that are catching up with the West in the economic terms, such as BRICS countries. And they're catching up economically. They want to have a greater say on international arena. They want to influence the international agenda more. And not all of them feel accommodated in the existing international institutions. And some of them are creating the alternative institutions, such as AIIB and stuff like that, creating the development banks that would provide financing solutions in the region, and creating the alternatives to the World Bank, IMF. But there are also political implications to this competition. And there are countries in the BRICS, for instance, there are countries that are democracies, such as India, and there are countries that have an alternative vision of the political choice, such as China or Russia. And I would say they are disturbing or challenging the current global order, and not in a peaceful way. They're challenging this status quo, and they're posing a security threat. And we can observe this on the instance of Crimea, for instance, if this threat comes from Russia. And well, this was a military tool they were using, but there are also a number of other techniques that Russia is using, for instance, using gas as a foreign policy tool in their neighborhood. If we speak about China, probably does not pose a direct threat to Europe in the terms of security. China is expanding in terms of economics and trade, and they're creating this One Belt, One Road initiative and expanding their economic ties. But if we talk about immediate security challenges, those come from Russia. And again, like this could be an example of how Russia is supporting anti-European groups in European Union, financing certain anti-European initiatives, or we can see the traces of Russian influence in the U.S. And so, how to preserve EU status in this century? I have a 3-ingredient recipe for Europe. First is to stay united and stick together in the face of external challenges, be it political or economic. Second is to build defense, but not only in a sense of military technology, not just like simple military technology, but to address the asymmetric threats that come again from cyber attacks, or again, I will bring this example of Russia versus, let's say, US, when they cannot compete in terms of economic might, in terms of economic growth, and in terms of political influence. And so what Kremlin leader is doing, he's using very wisely those asymmetrical tools of influence, where he could just target some alternative candidate, or like he could support the candidate who would favor then his political objectives. So the important part of the security preference for Europe are to address those asymmetric tools. And the third thing is to, well, strengthen alliances that Europe has now, and also to seek for possibly new alliances, to ally with democracies elsewhere, be it, let's say, India, Brazil, or other countries. Well, what we're observing now with the transatlantic relationship, it's a big question, which is pending, and we will observe what happened next in the actions of Trump administration, and we will observe the outcome of the next U.S. elections. Because the next actions of the Trump administration, maybe they won't change the status of transatlantic alliance and relationship dramatically, but if the new leader of the US comes and he will also shift inwards in his US policies, then probably Europe will lose this ally and a strategic ally, and they will have to look for other opportunities. And despite all that, I would like to finish on the optimistic note. I'm a huge fan of European project, and I believe that this is a very powerful idea that has been working for last decades. And I'm talking from a perspective from non-EU member who I come from Belarus, and I wish my country was part of European Union. I wish we joined, let's say, like 20 years earlier. Now it's too late for that. And we're facing those challenges from Russia in terms of security, and probably losing on certain advantages of the common market and all the freedoms that Europe has. And I'm not saying that there are no drawbacks, be it bureaucracy, lack of democracy, and so certain bureaucracy issues in European Union, or the so-called Brussels bubble, or lack of solidarity and stuff like that. But United Europe is a very powerful idea that has a huge potential inside it, and if the decision makers make the best, if they learn from the previous mistakes of, let's say, how the Euro crisis was managed, and what the consequences for the member states were, how it led to the rise of populism and nationalism. So again, Europe has a lot of potential inside it, and if it's used wisely, then it has the capacity to prosper in the 21st century.
Thank you so much. I do agree with you. EU is not the ideal institution, but you can't really tell me institution which is, let's say, better than European Union. Like, yeah. And I think Nevan had a quick question, right?
Yes, I really would want to add something, maybe a bit opposite from what the colleague said. Populism and nationalism in Europe. It's not so common thing, especially for European Union, but I believe it's not because Russia is financing some similar movements in Europe, although it might be financing. I don't have evidence neither case. But I think that it's more related to economical situation in European Union, especially in the terms of smaller countries, and let's them call like poor countries, which are getting more poor, and in terms of rich countries, which are getting more rich. It is something that is obvious for European Union, and it is one of the many struggles, actually. The second thing I want to ask you, do you know from which industry America makes the most of its profits, or mostly of their budget profits? Yes, war, exactly. Military economy. It's the most developed economy in United States. I'm 30 years old, and as far as I'm conscious about these things, I know that they're exporting their weapons all over the world, making the wars, and on that way they are actually earning their money. Okay, it's somehow legitimate, but it's not legitimate to try to take other countries with you, or even institutions, and to make that wars in the world on their account. And in this case, who made that migrant crisis? It was not made by the EU, at least non-consciously. It was also not made by Russia, nor by China, nor by India. It was made by United States. They produced the migrants, they produced the crisis, and then, of course, Europe, come on, open that door. Let the people settle in Europe. Okay, it's also legitimate, no problems. But there are actually problems, but for EU, not for those who created that migrant crisis. And on the other level, they are making a Brexit in UK. And what happens then? Okay, Brexit, UK goes out, and then incident in Salisbury, and they like, I believe it was a failed incident, but okay. And then they accuse Russia, and then UK asked for the other European Union countries to call their ambassadors from Moscow and something else. And they made a Brexit. You know, they are almost not part of European Union, and soon they probably won't be.
No, sorry for interruption, but we don't have enough time, and we would also like to leave some time for to the audition to ask the questions. I see a hand over there. Can someone please pass the microphone? Okay, thanks.
Hello, my name is Justas, and I would like to refer to our Revolution 4.0 topic. Well, actually, I work in a corporation which provides artificial intelligence solutions in the financial sectors all over the world. And I would like to add that our history remembers 4 revolutions. We had 2 industrial revolutions, later we had an internet revolution, and now we are living in a period of digital transformation and digital revolution. How do we understand the revolution? It is always removing old technologies and providing new technologies. It is always to hire someone, but to fire someone, excuse me. But every revolution and every transformations bring to the fact that that we have economic growth and we have new positions according to this revolution. Because, for example, in the days of digital revolution, we have new jobs, for example, data analysis or cybersecurity. So my question is not only to the speakers, but to all of us. Are we ready to live in this new world? Are we enough curious? Are we ready to be creative? Because that are the jobs that the machine can't do. Are we ready to take care of ourselves? Because artificial intelligence is not only to have a smart house or to have applications on your iPhone. It is a global challenge, and it is a big social and economics impact. So my question is to all of us: are we ready to be creative and to live in this nearest future? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think you answer for your question, yes, and each of us will think something on this topic. I just want to add that we need to understand one important thing. We can say, yes, we will live in that world and enjoy all opportunities, enjoy all stuff around us, or we can say, no, I not will live in this world, and in such way you will lose all opportunities, all stuff that are around you. It's my answer for your question. So we need to live in that world and try to speed up that process, to create new cool technologies and develop new stuff around us. Thank you.
Yeah, hello. Thank you very much for this interesting panel discussion. And I have a question connected with this one, because we talk a lot about new way of working in future. And as you said, now a lot of possibilities. You can watch video on YouTube and then do whatever you want. But don't you think that it can lead to some crisis, blue and white color crisis? Because there is a lot of job which cannot be done by computers. And when young people see that you can like create a video when you cut a soap, or you can make like a video when you're playing Counter-Strike and get a lot of money, it somehow changes your mind, and you may not think about some great things about how the future will change, how the world will change, and how you can impact it. So the question is, do you think that this way of changing may lead to crisis? And if so, how Europe can stand it and face it?
Who would like to pick this question? Anyone? Again.
I want to say every one of us need to read the book Homo Sapiens. Maybe someone read it before. Yes, it was awesome. Yes, yes. So really read that book. You will understand our future and our past. And I think each crisis is just temporary stuff. It can long, I don't know, 1 year or 5 years, but after it, we will stand up and our developer, our growth will be more important and with more cool stuff around.
If you could also say your name and country you come from when you're asking question, please.
Yeah, sure. I'm Shorena Barbakadze from Georgia. So my question deals with the following thing. Here we got the information that about the competitiveness of the European community in comparison to the USA, Russia, and China. So here I read about Russia, and frankly, I want to get the answer from the author of this sentence or something like this one. Do you really think that Russia will ever lead the world market? So there can be a competitiveness between the USA and China, but so I think that Russia will never lead any market. And I will explain later. So I will listen to your answer. Okay.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you very much for your question. Yeah, I might agree with you. I might agree with you because the future is very hard to predict, especially in terms of economy. You all know about new ways of currencies, digital currencies like bitcoins and such stuff. So it will very hard predict what will happen in future. But maybe Russia not by itself to lead some markets.
Yeah, so personally, I think that Russia can't be, so it's, how to say?
Leader.
Yeah, no, that's not Russia is not leader. Do you have any, I think you should have some information about the economic situation that's happening in China. So the China is the market leader just now.
Yes.
Yeah, so I say it for my personal experience. I had a great chance and a privilege to visit China, and I had high-ranking meetings with the authorities and with the head and presidents of the companies, and I saw everything with my eyes, so they are somewhere in the cosmos, you see, in a positive meaning, of course. For example, what we call here, let's say simply, for example, smart boards, yeah?
Yeah, be brief, please, because of time.
Yeah, I guess.
Because there is a guy from Georgia, he also want to guy. But I understand your question.
Okay, in short. In short,
okay.
yeah. Just now, China is leading the world market. Yeah.
Yes, it's obvious. And in future, it will. And Russia, maybe, but only together with Europe, as I said. Binding together the common interests between Europe and Russia and developing that interest that are common to their extent. I think it's the future of relations between Russia and Europe, and it's also chance, not only for Russia, but for both. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions? I see a hand over there.
Hello, Leon from Georgia. I have a question to Neven. Neven, you were speaking about the sanction towards Russia. You explained us that sanctions make problems not only for Russian, also for Europa. As I understand, you don't think that the sanction is not appropriate way to give political pressure on Russia. And what do you think? What will be? I would like to remember you that 20% of the Georgian territory is occupied by Russian. Also, Crimea and other part of the Ukraine is occupied by Russian. And what would you think about? What is the price of the actions?
Well, I'm not saying that sanctions that are imposed on Russia are not legitimate. There is for sure some reason, and you mentioned some reasons for that. It's true. But I think that the question of Crimea and also a part of Georgia is not a question of humankind and of humanity in future. I'm not talking about that two separate cases. Maybe you are watching that from the emotion side, as well as I am watching on the case of Kosovo from the emotion side. I understand you completely, but I'm thinking more in the future, where I think that cooperation between Russia and European Union is inevitable at any cost.
Any questions?
Hello, I'm Olga. Just a question. I understand that I support your opinion that cooperation is much better than arguments. However, there are some things that are just incompatible. So, in terms of political regime, do you really think that democracy can possibly be in cooperation with dictatorship? Obviously, I'm speaking about Europe and Russia. And do you see Russia turning into democracy, or maybe European Union into dictatorship?
Have you ever been in Russia?
Luckily not. Don't really want to.
That's actually the answer on this question. I understand your question, and the perception that people from Europe have toward Russia is like that, exactly like that. I was in Russia last year, I was in Russia this year. I will put aside my Serbian love toward Russia, but it's really different than that opinion. I'm not saying that Mr. Putin is not strong. You know, he is so strong.
No, it's just the
he's so strong.
simple
and you,
question.
Based on,
how can those completely different political regimes cooperate? How do you see it?
I want to say that it's not so different as you think. A lot of people were on the World Cup this year, and I think that a lot of them actually changed its perspective on Russia. When you go there, you see something else. I'm not saying, I'm mentioning that again, that Mr. Putin is really strong politician. And because of that, some people have perception that it's like not democratic regime. But actually, I think that Russia is much more closer to European Union than United States. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I want to close this topic on such point. We are speaking about countries and other stuff, but let's see our future also in a point with cooperation in terms of countries. Maybe institutions of countries are going on backstage and corporations are coming to lead over the road like Google or Facebook. And let's finish on this topic because Russia, Europe, Ukraine relations is a topic for 2 nights or even more. Okay?
And we have the time for the final question. Last question. Anyone? I see someone there. The name and the country, please.
Hello, I'm Vaida from Lithuania. So my question is, do you think that at some point technology is going to become so advanced that it will not be possible to control the bots that are influencing the cybersecurity anymore, and then they're going to become smarter than they can be controlled?
It's a very good question, thank you. Anybody else would like to answer? No? We have our technology expert here. Taras, would you like to answer this question? It's about security and technologies.
Okay, I can do this.
Yes, please.
I'm not the technology expert, but I have also the same worries because due to like forecast in few years, like all jobs will be replaced by human, and we will be able just living in the, I don't know, in internet, sitting in our homes, and we will be not needed anymore. And also when I'm looking on those, you know, artificial intelligence which we create, and I'm just afraid because you have input and output, and I'm just afraid that what people will do with those technologies, like we a little bit influence it. Like we have had many like examples when when Google started this project with this robot, when people were able to talk with them. After a few days, this robot, like this artificial intelligence, want to kill everyone and hate everyone. So I'm just afraid it depends really, you know, on us or where it goes. But you know, it's like a really abstract question. We can say actually like this. Thank you.
And please let me to pick the last question. I see a hand there.
Yeah, it's not a question actually, but probably to add up to what you have said. Like it really depends on us how artificial intelligence will look like, because it learns from the data that we provide to this technology. And there is such a thing as algorithmic bias. It's when the artificial intelligence software basically learns from the data that we give it to it, and then it can discriminate over certain things. So it actually depends on us how we create this software or applications, whatever, and that's how it will function.
Thank you so much. Thanks for everyone for being so active, and wish you a nice evening and nice time in Nowy Sącz. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this very interesting discussion. A lot of emotion, a lot of messages to be sent.